Let's kick things off. So welcome everyone. I'm Melissa Baustrom. I'm Assistant Dean for Graduate Student Professional Development in the Graduate School, and I'm really delighted to welcome everyone here today. I'm going to introduce our panelists and our format in just a moment. But first, let me say a word about the Academic Job Search Series. The series is co-sponsored by the Graduate School, the Duke Career Center. I'm pointing out Jennifer Levy from the Duke Career Center, and also the Office of Postdoctoral Services, and Mark Matheson is our esteemed videographer for today. There are a number of events of interest to folks in the humanities and social sciences still coming up. Monday there's a workshop on the teaching statement. Tuesday we have another of these panels on the interview process. And Wednesday there is a panel discussion of postdoc opportunities and how to think about those as part of your overall search strategy. So I hope many of you will take advantage of those events as well. So without further ado, let's kick things off for today's panel. I want to introduce our panelists today, starting in the red, on your left, my right. Professor Sujin Pak is an assistant professor of the history of Christianity here in the Divinity School. She received her bachelor's degree from Emory University and her MTS from Duke Divinity School and her PhD as well from Duke. So we're really pleased to welcome her back, welcome her continuing, right, however we want to put that. Great. Then to her left is Dean David R. Long, who is Dean and Department Head of Arts, Sciences and University Transfer at Durham Technical Community College. And he earned his bachelor's and his PhD in history from UNC Chapel Hill. Punctuated.
So you didn't like the UNC reference.
And then to my right is Professor Christopher Paul, who is Assistant Professor of Public Administration at North Carolina Central University. He earned his bachelor's degree in environmental science from Duke, as well as his PhD in environmental policy from Duke. And so we're really pleased to welcome him back down the street too. Yes. So in terms of format for today, I have a number of prepared questions that I've shared with our panelists. Those I took from the questions that you all shared as part of the registration process. So we'll start with those and we'll wrap up. We'll try to get to as many of those questions as we can. We'll leave some time for open questions from the audience. We'll try to wrap up the formal Q&A around 4:15 to allow for some time for informal networking for the last 15 minutes to make some individual connections. So with that said, I'm going to turn things over to the panel and ask each of our panelists to share a little bit about the balance of faculty responsibilities in teaching, research, and service at your institution, in your department, and what do you usually look for in new faculty to be in alignment with those values of students?
So I'm a faculty member here at Duke Divinity School as part of the Learn at Duke University, and the tendency at Duke University is to prioritize research because it is a research one institution, and so your research, your writing, your publications are a priority. However, I think we would like to say that teaching is very, very important, and service as well. But when you think about incoming faculty, you want to set them up for success. So you want to be sure they have a clear, strong research trajectory because that is under which the standards in which they will be measured first and foremost here at Duke University and at the Divinity School as well.
At the community college level, obviously the focus is a bit different. The emphasis is heavily on teaching. In fact, if teaching is your interest, I want to take a closer look at community colleges. When I was in graduate school, during the job search process, I don't think community colleges were mentioned, actually. I ended up where I am today, largely through a series of accidents. But I am where I am. I love it. I love teaching. I'm in administration now, but I still love teaching. I love help facilitating that. Having said that, at many community colleges, particularly at Durham Tech, research is rewarded. It's a professional development activity. I've got several peer-reviewed articles. We've got a sociology faculty member who's participating with a research project here at Duke. So research interests aren't excluded, but if you include in your application packet and you say at your interview, if you get one, that you are primarily interested in research, that's a mistake at the community college level. That's not what we're about.
So I'm a new faculty member, just in my second year. So you can imagine that a question about the balance of faculty responsibilities is quite an eye-opening question for me to confront. At NCCU, we're a teaching university for sure, sort of in the regional university scheme, but we also have very high aspirations for research. So my teaching load is 3 courses each semester, both semesters, but no teaching during the summer. And so I have that, but in fact most administrators also teach quite a bit as well. And yet we also have a fairly clear and moderate to high expectation of research across that period. And so I think there's sort of the disadvantages of a lot of responsibilities. The advantages that there's flexibility between sort of those categories of expectations. And so I think at a place like NCCU, we have an expectation for pretty well-rounded faculty or future faculty, in the sense that they're able to juggle those multiple types of responsibilities between teaching, research, and service.
For the next question, I think I'm going to start with the assistant professors first, and then maybe come to David. So during the initial application screening, what materials do you read first when there's a new faculty position open in your department? When do you consider materials like the teaching statement or the research statement or the diversity statement and the letters of recommendation, or in what order do you read materials, and in what order of importance do you read them?
So I'd say, so I'm actually currently on 3 searches this year, and I've been on probably 5 others prior to this. So it's also, I agree, it's like a completely eye-opening experience to be on the other side of this, after having been somebody who applied to a couple of jobs. So I'd say the first thing, and granted, within a larger R1 institution, this does shape sort of in some ways what you look at first. So I think the first thing we look at is the CV, because it's a very quick way to get a sense of the person. And so that would be said, like if you need to think about your CV in a certain way according to the kind of institution you're applying to. So if it's a research-oriented institution, you want to front load your writing or your research projects or your research statement or things of that sort. If it's a teaching institution, you want to at least put that teaching pretty high on the list. You might still put the publishing stuff first, but put that teaching pretty close there. So I'd say the CV is the sort of first filter to just see, hey, does this person meet sort of the field expectations as well as the possible publishing expectations. But then I want to say cover letter is crucial. So I'm shocked now on the other side how many times people didn't write a cover letter. It's a place where you need to really show what you have to bring and who you are and your understanding of the job, and make those connections, like what gifts are you bringing, why this job, and why does this resonate with you, and show your knowledge of the institution and how your interests connect with that institution. That's the place to do that. The CV can do that to some extent, but it's where you get to narrate it. So both of those together end up being the crucial pieces. If you want to say there's a screening piece, the CV, primarily because of R1, we want to make sure the publications are there and the subject matter matches. That's the other surprising element. How many times people will apply to a job that doesn't match the job description. I know the job market is hard and problematic. It's a tough job market. And so people try to make a stretch and apply to something that might not exactly match. Now, there can be cases made for that, but then that's where your cover letter is absolutely essential to make that case. Like if you have this background and it looks like it doesn't quite fit to the job description, but you think it could, then make that case in the cover letter. And and usually those are the 2 pieces we'll read first and then go from there.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think once that it's established that the applicant is sort of a plausible candidate in terms of their CV and background, and sometimes that comes through in our case it spits it out through the HR software. then the cover letter is the place where you get to make your case, and so it has to be convincing. It has to be immediately convincing. So it has to be clearly written, clearly formatted, addressed to the right person or committee, and directly identify with not only the institution but the position itself. I think I would say that in my case, I was coming from an interdisciplinary PhD program here at Duke in environmental policy, and I was able to end up in a different field, which has been really good. And I think being able to convey very clearly that how exactly I was going to translate my skill set from the interdisciplinary PhD to a specific discipline, to a different field than I was in, is really critical. And so the CV sort of has to back up everything else that you want. I think we'll maybe address the CV in a little bit more detail throughout the discussion now. But the CV, your cover letter should not replicate your CV. It should not have it should not have a list of all the things you've done, or even perhaps the thing you're most proud of necessarily. It should have the things that are most relevant to your experience, to the job you're applying for, in my opinion.
Durham Tech has a formal job application, and at the very end of it, it asks for a written statement. So when applicants get to that portion of the process, they're actually asked to comment on our open door policy, which essentially means that we accept all students. Now, we means test them essentially. If they're ready for curriculum work, to do college level work, then fine, place them in college level classes. If they need to go into other programs, we'll put them in other programs. But that essentially means that we have an incredibly diverse student body. I mean, in terms of life experience, race, class, gender, age, really it's the most diverse population I've ever worked with, and I've taught a number of different places. So I would say that the reaction to that statement in our application is one of the first things we look at. Do they know what the open door is? Do they know what they're getting into? Are they just applying for a job because they want one? Now I can appreciate that. We all want a job. But we also like to see the candidates know exactly what they're getting into and that they're suited for the kind of environment they're going to find at Durham Tech. A lot of times people will take their cover letter and they'll just cut and paste into the statement about the open door. That's a no-no. So, I mean, attention to detail. I guess you were pointing that as well. Don't apply for a job that you don't have the qualifications for, that sort of thing. It also helps very much if you've done your research. If you indicate that you've come to the Durham Tech website, you've seen what kind of programs we offer, looked at it holistically. The teaching statements are important as well, but I'll be honest, for the most part, everybody seems to say the same thing: dynamic classroom. So after a while, that becomes a little bit meaningless. Diversity statement for us is a very, very, very big deal. Again, if people don't enjoy working in an environment that is unpredictable, and I mean that in a good way, we are constantly adjusting as instructors to different kinds of students. We have kids who go to Harvard and Stanford when they transfer, and we have kids who sometimes we wonder how they got the prerequisites completed to get into the classes. So you have to manage that kind of student body, and some people enjoy that. I do. That's why I stayed at Durham Tech. And I know perfectly well people in my graduate cohort who would really not like that sort of environment. So what we're looking for in a diversity statement or in a cover letter is just some kind of indication that the person honestly is interested in working at Durham Tech and they understand what to expect should they be hired.
I have a quick question. Dr. Hall, you mentioned about the HR software. So does that happen in all institutions? You can go through the HR software first, just screening of cultural CVs?
I think it depends on the institution exactly that process, whether or not there's a screening committee. But I mean, I think particularly at public institutions, they tend to have the faculty screening has to go more similar to the general hiring process as private institutions might have a slightly different separation.
For us, it's more a credential screen. People have to have the minimum required credentials in order to be considered.
Then that comes to the question like, what kind of keywords we should be included in the CV?
At least at NCCU, in the search that I just completed, I mean, we got every, like, the search committee got every single applicant to the job. So HR didn't do any pre-screening, but, you know, but the HR software compiled it. So, like, it still sort of was modeled after what you would think of in a normal academic search, in terms of we had to deal with all.
So you mentioned that commonly happen in public universities.
Yeah, I think in.
Yeah, so like, for instance, our searches, I mean, only recently have we actually digitalized it to go to academic jobs online and use a system for people to upload their stuff, and then it all comes in one place. We had an administrative assistant in the dean's office who would gather the materials and then give it to the chair and the committee. But now we're using academic jobs online, but it's not any kind of HR or filtering, it's just to consolidate it all in one place.
May I ask about the CVs? I know a lot of people go straight from the bachelor's to the master's to the PhD, postdoc, and their experience is the research. I'm at the other end of the spectrum where I have a lot of non-academic background and employment experience, other accomplishments. Does the search committee care about non-academic experience to the extent that I should be writing about it in a CV, or is it all about research related positions?
Well, I'll take that one first. We take life experience into account. And I don't think I'm being inappropriate here, but we did have one search committee a couple of years ago where we were deadlocked between two candidates. And one candidate had a sterling application, a CV, all of these academic accolades, went through a research in one institution, got a PhD. But it wasn't clear to us that he would be comfortable in the kind of diverse environment that I just described. And quite honestly, we tried to ask him, since he didn't have any diverse teaching experience on his CV, we tried to ask him, well, do you have any life experiences that will show us that you can navigate the kind of environment you're about to encounter if you're hired? And the only thing he could really say was he was a counselor at a sleepaway camp. And it was interesting because he may have worked out well, but that was really a point where we needed to see a broader set of life experiences. And it actually worked very much to his favor. So there was a candidate who was just as well qualified in most respects, but maybe a degree from a university ranked a few places below the candidate who didn't get the job. But just to summarize, yes, we take life experience into account. Sometimes it's a very, very heavy factor.
And I would add that even at so-called Research One institutions, life experience matters. I mean, I would say in that cover letter, you want to bring all of your strengths and gifts and narrate it in a way that aligns with what the job seems to be asking, and from your research of that institution and the core values of that research that institution hold, to bring in every piece that and try to narrate, your research, narrate your teaching experience and the varieties of that, or your engagement with different contexts, or your leadership experience. Like, you should use all of that to narrate a strong position, and that all of that will count. To be frank, in a Research One, if you don't have the research there, then that can be a red flag that could trump everything, not necessarily, but could. But if you have sort of a basic research strength and you've got all this life experience, that really does matter.
I agree. I'm in a Department of Public Administration, so we're very interested in application, and I think that the CV is important for documenting it. So if you document it well and still following the appropriate format of an academic CV, then I think that is absolutely an appropriate place to have that documentation for all these reasons.
And there's also, there's sort of a social element to this as well, because particularly at 4 years, Well, and at the community college level as well, because we have people who come and stay for 10, 15, 20 years on the faculty. But the committee is also sitting there thinking, this might be somebody I'm spending the next decade with, right? So if you have an interesting past, an interesting background, sometimes there's sort of a social element that you play as well.
So I'm going to move on to the next question on our list, which is, we just kind of rattled through a whole list of different kinds of application materials, a CV, a cover letter, teaching statement, research statement, diversity statement. At a certain point, especially if you're a graduate student currently, you may feel like you need to kind of recycle some of the same experiences, and use them again in those documents in order to cover all of those bases. What are some strategies that the panelists might recommend to kind of differentiate each of those documents from the other one, or ways that, frameworks that folks in the room might use in preparing those documents?
I don't want to monopolize if somebody wants to first. So I mean, other places do it differently. Thus far, the searches I've been a part of, we haven't necessarily always asked for a separate research or separate teaching statement, so that's where your cover letter does that. So that's why I emphasize cover letter being so crucial. Now, I might add that you could add other documents, like if it's good information, giving more information can usually be helpful. But in that cover letter, then it needs to be different, like has already been said, from that CV, because it's really where you craft a narrative and a persuasive case for why this is a good match for you, why you're a good match for the institution, why you're excited about this job, why your gifts and the things that you bring, you can see, that this would be a place for not only that you would flourish, but that you would bring you would bring your gifts to the institution. So I'd say you want there to convey your interest, show how the job fits well with your training and research, and show how it fits with your sense of vocation, your sense of your understanding of your life work and where you want to go. Try to do your research and show that you know the school's core values, you know some of the programs the school does, and show how you connect with that, show how you connect with possible colleagues that you would have in that work together, in some concrete ways. Show that it's time consuming if you really want to do this well, because you really want to research that school, you want to kind of look at what the other faculty members are doing, you want to get a sense of why this job and how did they see this job fitting into the larger picture of the school's goals and programs. And then, so in that statement, I would say give an account of your research, but don't just list it just like your CV already gives you. Like, assume they've got that information from your CV, so you want to narrate your research in a particular way of how that fits into what you understand to be the larger goals of the school, and specifically that job position, to show how you can fit into that and how it would be a place for you to contribute. And likewise, the teaching statement, I think the big picture is you want to show you're a dynamic, engaging teacher, and you want to show that you're going to be a good colleague, right? Because that's another thing behind the scenes, like, you could be the best, brightest star in terms of academics and then just be a terrible person, right? So you want to show that you're a team player. Most institutions want somebody who's not going to just be about themselves, but they're going to be invested in the institution, invested in being a team player, and so finding ways to. Those are some key things to try to communicate in this cover letter, which I would say is kind of the thing that needs to be distinguished from all else. Which also means that, and I'll stop after this, that I think each cover letter needs to be carefully crafted to each job. So there can be some core statements that you use across applications, but this is the hard work of it. Like, your CV could be pretty much the same. Teaching statement may or may not need to be adopted. Research statement may or may need to be, but the CV really needs to be very nicely crafted to that particular institution and its job that it's offering.
Yeah, and I agree with that entirely, because as we've said, there's evidence
cover letter, I'm sorry.
The cover letter that there's evidence that the first pass of that review when the search committee gets it is just the cover letter and CV, and so that means that if you make to the next level, your material, whether it's a teaching statement or research statement or other supporting statements, that's your next chance to convince the reader that this person should rise to the top. So it can't be the same, or else they're like, well, I guess they're still in that middle of the pack. So you want to, I mean, so it becomes really important at that point, even though it feels like you're sending out tens or more applications that, you know, and that's not going to be read by, you know, some or many of those committees depending upon the situation. When it does matter, you need that statement to be good to sort of advance your case for your applications.
And actually, I'm curious about you folks, or who's in the room? Are these all humanities, social sciences people? We have science people. What do we have in terms of graduate students?
Do we just go around and share name and program? David,
I'm David Stifler. I'm a fifth-year PhD student in the classical studies department.
I'm Diana Araki. I'm in the graduate program Religion, Hebrew Bible, that's on track.
I'm Tyler Felgenhauer. I'm a postdoc in the engineering school, but my degree's in public policy.
I'm Evan. I'm a graduate student in the computational media arts and cultures program.
Samantha Arsenic. I'm a sixth year in musicology and on the job market.
I'm Sophia Romero. I'm a postdoc in the linguistics program.
I'm Dolly Corey. I'm a second-year postdoc in psychiatry.
I'm Jen Levy. I'm a counselor at the Career Center, so I hope to be helpful to all of you. Thanks for letting me listen.
Stephen Jefferson, fourth-year PhD student in the sociology department.
I'm Tessa Nana. I'm a PhD student in Romance Studies.
I'm Jenny. I'm PhD at Educational Literature.
What are you doing from the anthropology department? Those students?
Pretty wide group, but mostly humanities, social sciences. I got us a little off track, but I was curious. I mean, getting back to differentiating your job materials is hard to do. I guess, you know, if I were to add anything, I would say don't apply for a position you're not interested in. Don't throw out a bunch of boilerplate applications. If you apply to a school, be careful. At Durham Tech, most hiring committees have 5 members, and we typically go through every single application. A couple positions we hired for, we had 110 applicants. And through every single one of them, we compared notes and we narrowed it down to a few people to interview. So, you know, if we saw that you had carefully considered what you were saying, you knew what Durham Tech was about, and you had the qualifications, you like to teach an incredibly diverse population, and all of those things work in your favor. But sloppiness, you know, to whom it may concern, you know, introductions, that sort of, it really does, I think at any institution that would undercut your chances of getting any kind of interview. So, you know, be careful, do your research, and again, target only those schools that you're genuinely interested in.
And so I also want to say that I definitely had a really good experience using the professors and by Karen Kelsky. I actually was just referring to it this week with some other materials I was preparing and when I'm mentoring students, and it you know, there may be, she has very strong opinions about the job market and academia, but what she does do that I really wanted and found really useful is she writes down everything. And so in that book, she has a chapter on each of these statements. And so if you want a way to get a sense of how to differentiate those, I mean, she's put it down there and it's nice ordered chapters. So I definitely recommend it. I don't get any royalties from saying that, but I found it incredibly useful when someone says, like, why don't we just write down all these things? She does have it all written down, at least to give a starting point for those different statements.
I'd be interested to know what the other panelists think, but you also need to be careful, so the cover letter shouldn't be like totally just tooting your own horn and going off on just all your stuff without making those connections,
Yeah.
right? And then it also doesn't need to be exorbitantly long. It needs to be long enough to communicate, but if you go too long, that can be a problem, right? So I typically have aimed for, 3 pages at most. 2.5 to 3 pages is what but I would be interested in what the other panelists think. So.
Even that sounds pretty long to me. I would think of it to
over
2 pages.
2 would do it.
2 would do it, yeah.
Great, that's very helpful. While we're on the topic of materials, I'm going to jump ahead down the list a little bit and ask, what about candidates who share websites or online materials or some other kind of document that we haven't mentioned yet, where does that come into consideration by the search committee? And I'll let anybody jump in who has experience.
I have to say, for the most part, we're encouraged not to do web searches on candidates. I know that it happens informally, but we're not encouraged to do that. We if a candidate specifically includes a link to the professional page, then we give it. Now, having said that, I imagine as we go forward and everything, the internet becomes more and more important, that may change. But right now, we really don't look at that material to any great extent.
So at the point that, like if somebody has shared their teaching portfolio online with you, will you look at that, in kind of the first cut, second cut, where do you kind of look at those additional materials in your considerations?
So I know I'm saying the same thing. So CV, cover letter, and then we will typically, for instance, letters of recommendation, or at least in our processes, typically don't happen until you've narrowed it down to a smaller pool. So sometimes they're not even in. Now, more in the junior level, those recommendations are earlier looked at, but at a senior level, you don't even ask for the recommendations until you know you're going to move forward that person in some manner. Whether you've narrowed it down to 8 and you're going to narrow that 8 to 3, or whether you've already got it narrowed down to 3. So recommendations are sort of the last piece that are looked at. But and then there's different processes now people use. So if we have times where it's clear and we get our 3 candidates really clear, then we might go straight to then, once we've looked at the cover letter and CV, we then look at the others, the teaching statement or the research statement, and we call the recommendation, we get the recommendations or we call people. There's that, but sometimes if you're not clear, I've had some searches where we narrowed it down to 6 or 8, and then we held Skype interviews, or you have the interviews at at a conference center, right? To just have short, 15-minute interviews to help narrow that down. So that doesn't exactly answer where the documents come in, but just know that recommendations usually come in last in my experience.
And sort of specifically with websites and things like that, I think we sort of know in this day and age that people use the internet a lot, and so you certainly, I think that it's not uncommon for someone's first response is to Google someone when they're interested, and so in the searches I've been part of here at Duke and then NCCU, when you get to a short list, you do Google people to find their academic profiles, and I don't think that people need fancy personal websites or but you sort of have to have an online presence. You have to sort of prove that you exist as a public scholar to some extent, I think, in the academic world. And so, like a Google Scholar profile and taking control of that if you have that, or just sort of so that when you type in Melissa Bostrom Duke, it's immediately obvious that this is a scholar that exists and has done real work, and that there's sort of a way to find additional information about it.
So the next question on our list is about weighing teaching record, publication record, and I think I'm going to actually combine that a little bit with the next question down. Can someone coming straight out of a PhD program be competitive? When you're thinking about opportunities to teach, opportunities to publish, because they haven't had as much time as somebody who's already finished their PhD, can they be competitive? What are some creative ways, or what are some ways that you've seen candidates be successful if you have hired folks coming straight out of a PhD program?
Well, if they have demonstrated teaching experience in a relevant institution, certainly we look at people who have just come out of a PhD program or the master's program in some cases. And I think one thing that I would mention about community college and the hiring processes there is that we weigh very heavily the teaching demonstration. And I don't know if that's the case at Duke or Central. Do you have candidates actually do a teaching demonstration as part of the process? Or?
We haven't, so we took, I mean, I can explain our sort of interview day, but they give a public lecture that's more, again, because it's more about the research. And they meet with students, but they haven't done it.
So
I've had my doctoral student have to, actually did a teaching.
Right.
Like he just got hired at this other institution, and he had not only a public lecture, but had to teach a class and be observed.
And at the community college level, that's almost universally the case. You have to do a teaching demonstration, and that can be make or break. You know, we've had people again with Research One credentials, Ivy League PhD,
Not always the best teacher.
manuscript with Oxford University Press, and I guess, you know, just one of them had sort of a social anxiety order. I mean, it was, so again, there are different considerations to be made. You know, you have to like to teach, and you have to be able to show that you like to teach. It's part of the hiring process. And I've seen the teaching demonstration make or break decisions again and again. When I was hired, they pulled the whole department in, and because I was deadlocked. It was a deadlock between myself and another candidate. So I went through the whole interview process, and then the tiebreaker was going to be the teaching demonstration. Wow.
No pressure.
No pressure.
I mean, I think, you know, I mean, so I had the good fortune to get this tenure track job as I came out, you know, my first year out, and as I finished my PhD last year. And I think, you know, in my case, and in my experience with my peers, and that, you know, as long as you can demonstrate that you have the set of capabilities that the university and the position are looking for, there's sort of recognition whether, you know, of your sort of level of experience on the job market, or in a position at a university, an academic position. And so, you know, I didn't have a ton of teaching experience, but I had some, and you know, I had some publications, and you know, some service that, you know, I was able to sort of convey that I had each of those skills that, you know, then, you know, got further along, because you know, I think then the visit's a whole sort of another part of the process in terms of communicating the skill set and the links and fit with the department, and so, you know, to get to that point, you know, you have to be believable across all those categories. And one of the things that Karen Kelsky, I think, sort of says, but I often advise, is that really that, you know, show, don't tell. So, you know, give good evidence in each of your materials, and that's really what makes the difference. Like your specific feedback you've gotten about your teaching, either from an observer or from students, you know, specific publications or research that you presented if you don't have a publication. You know, I don't know that, you know, often it helps to have at least one peer-reviewed publication in a reputable journal, but even if you can demonstrate that you have research that is clearly in that category, that it will be, I think that it's possible when someone sees you on the job market to know that you're a good candidate for a position, even if you're competing against people who have much more established CVs from having been in another position. So.
Yeah, I'd say as long as it really is entry-level, assistant level, you know, entry-level position, then most definitely you will be considered in the kind of searches that I know about in humanities. You do want to try to have some teaching experience, so some way in which you can show teaching experience. You know, ideally that it be, you know, being a teaching assistant to someone, or if you have the opportunity in your department to teach your own class once you're at the upper level of your studies, that's even better. And then to have gotten teaching evaluations is really, really helpful. Like, so I know when I first applied, you know, to my first job, that I had not only a teaching statement, but a packet, a sample of evaluations. And I strategically, you know, I gave not just my glowing, you know, really glowing evaluation, like evaluations that are really positive, but concretely positive, right? That just don't say, oh, she's a great teacher, but say why I was a good teacher. And then also including at least one or two critical evaluations that are not, again, not just, you know, ones that just say, oh, she was terrible and don't say anything, but actually gave you some critical, constructive feedback. Because then I work that into my teaching statement to say, so this is what I did with that critical constructive feedback, and this is how I adapted my teaching strategies to listen to that. Or, or how I didn't think that part worked, and I say why, like why within my larger teaching philosophy I did this, but then here's how I also adapted. So you can work those, and so you can show, even if it's only one class that you've taught, or that, if there's something you can use out of that to show your teaching experience and the way you're also an adaptable teacher. You're somebody who's willing to learn. So I think but you do want to, it is hard if you have zero teaching experience. It's not impossible, but it makes it a lot harder. People do want to know you have some experience, and they'd love to be able to have some access to the feedback on that too.
Yeah, I mean, I really would encourage getting as much teaching experience as possible, and as many different kinds as you can, and as many different venues. Unless you're, completely devoted to a life of research. I really think it's helpful when you're applying for any job to be able to say I've taught, this variety of institutions, I've done it well, and quite honestly for me it helped me figure out where I wanted to be in terms of my career. Like I said, at UNC the job search said nothing about community colleges when I got my PhD, and I ended up at Durham Tech as an accident, as an emergency hire. I was fixed-term faculty at UNC at that point. And so I ended up teaching at the community college and at Carolina, essentially the same class to radically different populations. And I found that I really enjoyed my work in community college more than I did at Carolina. I love Carolina, but it didn't feel like as good a fit at Durham Tech. So I think if you teach as many classes in as many different institutions as you can, it might actually help you figure out what's the best fit for you and what kind of opportunities you might enjoy.
I also add that at the entry level, my recommendations letters serve a slightly different purpose, because your advisors, your mentors, your people who have been forming you or who know your work, they're the ones that the committee is going to sort of rely on them to say, hey, what's this person's potential? What's their teaching potential? What's their teaching gifts? What's their their writing and scholarly potential? Because if you can only, understandably, and we understand this, you can only show so much given you've only had this much experience, right? So those recommendation letters play a much more crucial role to casting the vision of who is this person and what is their potential, which means you also want to be very careful about who is writing your recommendation letters, that they will do that for you. Because at an upper level, you kind of already establish your position. And so then the recommendation letters are also answering a different set of questions. Is this person going to be a good colleague? It's answering questions like that. Or it might be answering a question, is this person's scholarship, how is this received in the field? So it's answering a different set of questions than the entry level kind of thing.
Looping back to the comments about gaining teaching experience, are there opportunities for graduate students and postdocs to teach at Durham Tech while they're here?
There might be some preparing future faculty members in the room, maybe not. Okay, so I'll probably see you in a couple of weeks at Durham Tech. So we have a formal partnership with Duke that helps graduate students work at Durham Tech as adjunct instructors, and can be instructors of record, which I think is incredibly valuable. You get to run your own class. We don't micromanage. When I was hired in my first position at Durham Tech, I was told essentially to teach the way I would at Carolina, which means I get all sorts of latitude in terms of designing my own course. So there are opportunities, and beyond that, at the community college level, there's this dynamic that's very, very different from the Research 1 and 4-year level, in that if you're hired as a part-time faculty member, your chances of becoming full-time are much, much higher than if you come to a community college as somebody from the outside. Typically at 4-year institutions, Research 1 institutions, if they hire you in a fixed-term position or as an adjunct, they're saying they're never going to hire you full-time. Or if they do, you're going to have to sort of be creative and craft your own position. So I mean, that's something else to keep in mind. Teaching part-time at a community college is a foot in the door in a way that it's not at some four-year institution.
So I'm going to come back to our list of questions and hopefully bring up what I hope is a fun question. That is, are there any red flags that you see in application materials? Any stories you could tell here, any cautionary tales? Everyone's looking at Chris.
I have the least experience. I mean, I think apart from the obvious sort of dear incorrect university and search chair that happens far too often. I mean, I've seen it even in my limited experience.
Yep.
That's like, especially like usually you get it corrected the salutation line and then it's incorrect the next paragraph down. Like that often rules out some percentage of the applicants. But beyond that, I mean, for me, I'm particularly bothered when someone sort of misconstrued their work. Like, I think it's much better to, like, for example, if you have a publication but it's not in a peer-reviewed journal or it's not in a search index journal or something like that, it may be important to include and may be important work, but don't sort of mix it in with peer-reviewed publications. It's much better, even if you don't have other peer-reviewed publications, to be really clear about what the category of research or publication it is. And I've seen that go a lot. I mean, even in this I just did, where there's like a mix of a mix of working papers along with some peer-reviewed publications. It becomes very hard to evaluate that, and so that sort of lack of clarity then makes me sort of concerned about the whole application.
Yeah, I agree. Like, if you have a work that's not actually published, don't at all act like it is, Or if you have a book in progress and it's really only this much done and you act like it's this much done, that's just not, it's not going to help you. It's going to be a problem down the road. So to be sort of, like, just speak up your strengths, but not say anything that's anything close to dishonest, because that will be very, very problematic. I'd much rather kind of know honestly where you are and use from your recommendation letters and other things like your potential and hear those things. I think another red flag is, frankly, a very lukewarm and certainly a negative recommendation letter can kill your application right there. Lukewarm, I say lukewarm because these days people are a little bit excessive in the positive. They actually try to make us give critiques. They're like, really, we want you to give us critiques, and we won't take the critiques as red flags because nobody writes really bad things. They just write a glowing. So it's a hard thing to manage because like sometimes somebody really does want some constructive things and there's ways to say that really still gives you a glowing recommendation. But at the end of the day, you don't want something lukewarm or anything that's going to raise really problematic, whether ethics or collegiality or any academic integrity, any of those things. You just don't want those recommendations to work. And then, like I already said, not writing a cover letter, which I can't tell you how many times that's happened. There's nowhere else to go. It's like, we're like, okay, we're done with that one.
Yeah, and in some of the hiring committees I've been on, we've run into the lukewarm reference letter and actually the lukewarm reference as well. And that grinds everything to a halt, because quite honestly, it just seems to show bad judgment.
Can you give us an example of what you mean by a lukewarm reference letter, or kind of just to make that clear to everybody in the room?
Mine was a phone call.
Okay. I mean, it's sort of somebody just saying platitudes, like it's just nice, very general, like it's a good scholar, decent teacher, like nothing concrete. And if there's not, so it's like, so let me back up and say, I, by principle, will not write somebody a recommendation letter unless I know I can write a really strong glowing one. I think that's my ethical obligation, that if somebody asks me, I have to, even if it's embarrassing or uncomfortable, if I can't write them that good one, I've just got to tell them. Because if I write this sort of hedging recommendation letter that's just trying to be nice but can't really say anything concretely good about this person, then I basically have killed their chances, and I should not have done that to them. So I should not agree to write the recommendation letter. So, but not everybody operates that way. So you kind of need to, so if it's just these general things and it's not anything concrete and not glowing and not clearly naming some concrete things, and then it's a red flag.
But we can't possibly know that because they're all confidential. And
Right.
if you ask for a letter and they say, yes, I'll write you one, and seem to have no hesitation, we can't know if it's lukewarm.
It's true that you can't, and at the end of the day, know, but
Again, I'm getting back to the issue of judgment. You know, if we get a candidate who doesn't seem to understand that they don't have a good relationship with the person who's writing the letter, and the person who's writing the letter isn't considerate and understands they shouldn't write the letter if it's not going to be a strong one, which, you know, it was a bad choice.
And having recently been on the job market, I think that there's a few things that you can and should do. One is, you know, having conversations early on with the people you want to write letters of recommendation about. Not only your asking them to do that, but what your expectations of the job market are, and so you have that communication. And then also, in one way to sort of prevent any weak letter by accident, also being very clear with what you think your accomplishments are that should be conveyed in the letter, often or maybe even tailored for the specific jobs. If you have that opportunity, saying, you know, for University X, you know, I really want to emphasize that I'm good in this type of research skill, or I was really good in the classroom around teaching undergraduates in a service learning setting, and so you can make the letter writer's job easier by, you know, giving them a little bit of a bullet list of things that you think are important evidence of what you care about. That way also can sort of prevent a letter where, for whatever reason, maybe the deadline was too short, or but that it didn't come across clearly and confidently. So.
You need to have good communication with whoever's writing for you. Be confident.
you need to have already received clear, positive affirmation prior to asking for that recommendation. If that's not the case, then you're treading into unknown waters.
Any more questions?
Coming back to the recommendation letters, do the big names count in these cases, or what's necessary element?
What's up?
I said I wanted to hear your answer on that too.
So that's a mixed bag. I mean, it depends on what the big name's known for. Some big names are controversial, right? So for some, it'll be a dividing point, right? So this big name, and these people love this person, these people really dislike. So that's like knowing your institution. Like if this institution likes this person, yeah, use the big name. If this person is not clear that they value that viewpoint, then absolutely, it doesn't matter if that's a big name, it could actually be a problem. So you kind of have to know the context. So, you know, in general, a big name should be helpful, but if it's a divisive big name, then you've got to really know your context to know whether that's going to be helpful or not. The problem with some big names is they'll just sort of throw off a glowing, vague recommendation, so you want to make sure they're going to write that really concrete.
To avoid this sort of lukewarm letter.
Sometimes your better recommendation letter writers are not the big names,
Right.
to be honest.
Is there another question?
I was just going to add, I was on the job market before I decided to do a postdoc, and I've always had my professors ask me to write the letter, and then they review it. And whenever I've had students ask me, I don't ask them to write it because it's actually a lot of work. But I always have them review it before I send it. It's kind of the same thing. Like I wouldn't say yes to writing a letter if I wasn't comfortable with them seeing it. If I didn't feel I could write a recommendation like that. But yeah, I've had 3 or 4 professors ask me to write my own letter.
Wow. Yeah, I find that rather shocking.
They outsourced that, huh?
They just, one of them told me, well, it's a good, practice for you to kind of sell yourself.
I'm gonna have to try that one.
I think that's ethically problematic, to tell you the truth.
Well, they go through it and they can make changes, but yeah.
But I mean, I see where you're getting at, but I mean, that's the kind of openness you want, and that's the kind of trust you want to avoid a situation where there's a reference letter that
That's right. It
causes
should,
problems.
in a certain way, it should be a letter you're willing to show the person.
Yeah. And typically, I've had several recommenders do that with me, and I've done it with several faculty members applying for jobs at other institutions.
And I think it does depend a bit on the discipline in school too. I mean, I sort of had an experience with this because even though I sort of am aware that I had good, strong recommendations and positive support, it was also very clear that there had to be a lot of separation in terms of that the letter was not for me to be seen. You know, I didn't get a chance to review it, and so that I sort of recall that being a pretty important point, that it was a letter written completely independent of my oversight.
That's been my experience too. So I haven't had the practice of letting people see my letters, even though, because I tell them straight up, I won't write you one unless I know I can write you a good one. But I've been in the culture more of like there should be a total separation, and that's kind of an absolute rule. So I find this shocking.
I mean, it might be different for different fields.
Yeah, I think it is.
I mean, psychology, psychiatry, sociology.
I have a question kind of about voice and cover letters. I think I've been trying to be self-conscious in my materials about not coming off as like this woman who loves to teach. And so I think my cover letter has a kind of like, I can do these things vibe. Is that a bad thing, or is that, like, I feel like in an interview it's not going to be hard to convey, like, look, I'm a nice colleague. But how much should I put that in a letter, especially as a, like, consciousness about gender bias and voice and stuff like that?
So again, you know your context. So if it's a research-oriented one, it's good to just come off strong, like this is what I am, this is who I am, this is what I do, and this is how it connects with you.
Yeah.
If it's a teaching-oriented, I think you want to be, you know, the tone should have maybe a bit more warmth to it.
Okay.
So it's kind of knowing your context, but I understand there is gender biases. You know, they don't. They'll say, look at your name, and they don't know.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for like how to do that well? Like yeah.
I mean, this is just an idea, but if I can fall back on this idea of, you know, showing, not telling, like in any instance, like, you know, saying I'm an enthusiastic teacher, we know it's just, it doesn't convey a lot, but you can, you know, I think it is dependent upon context and the type of job, and if you have any sense of what that department and the committee might be like, but you know, you can convey your, say, like, let's say you really enjoy teaching, like convey your experience with hands-on lab learning groups, or you know, or service learning projects, or, you know, with some specific evidence that allows you to show a pretty deep enthusiasm without sort of that ambiguity of other, you know, of other just, you know, less. More descriptive, less sort of evidence language. So.
Yeah.
So I have a question. So obviously the teaching goes in the teaching statement, and the research goes in the research statement. But how should the balance of other materials, such as diversity statement and cover letter, relate to other parts, relate to the sort of 3 or 4 parts of the job between teaching, research, service, and possibly mentoring? That is, should one's experience in service as a grad student, like as a grad student council rep, be mentioned in those and possibly even foregrounded? Curious as to what you think.
I mean, that's an important point. If somebody's coming on as a full-time faculty member, one of the expectations would be that they serve on committees and task forces, and they help the college function. So if we can see evidence that you perform those services, you know, you excel at them, or at least you don't dislike them intensely, then that is helpful. I'm not sure how that you can integrate that with every element of your package, but certainly, you know, that could be in the cover letter. It could show up in your CV as well.
It's hard for me to answer that question because our applications typically don't ask for a separate research statement and a separate teaching statement, so the cover letter is expected to do that. But if you had those separate things, then I would say, you know, then the cover letter should be distinguished from that teaching statement and the research statement to exactly show your connections with that institution and its goals and core values, right? So you can weave in parts of your research to show how it resonates with that, or weave in parts of your teaching understanding, teaching philosophy to show how. So it's really the tight place to make your case of why me and why I want to apply here and why I'm excited about this job. That speaks, because your research statement might be, it potentially could be something you send with any and all applications and not necessarily tailored, although you might want to slightly tailor it. It would be good to take the time to do that. But potentially you could do that, but then do the tailoring in the cover letter, right? And so that would be how it would be very different than those general statements.
So I have, I think, one more question left in our prepared list panel, and that'll give everybody else time to think of some more questions if they have them. And that is, we've heard a lot about tailoring the cover letter, looking very carefully at institutional goals and potential collaborators and really working that into the letter. For folks in the room who are lucky enough to have maybe a couple dozen jobs to apply to, are there ways to achieve efficiencies in that process? This sounds like, a lot of work.
And certainly you're going to have, a foundational framework of materials, right? Probably your teaching statement, your teaching portfolio will be pretty much set, diversity statement to a certain extent. So, that framework will be there and you can use it over and over again. I will repeat myself and just say that it's a waste of time not to research the institution that you're applying to and to know that you actually do want to work there and that you understand what they do. So in a way, they're built-in inefficiencies. I mean, it's going to take some time, but if you don't invest that time,
You won't stand above that.
Yeah,
The others.
you're wasting it.
I mean, I would say that it's worth it to create your initial generic versions of these sort of core elements that you'll need for your job package, even if they vary. So I mean, early in the job market process, I had my like a basic cover letter, a teaching statement, a research statement, a diversity statement, and then I mean, I was actually just looking at these recently to send to a friend who's on the job market, and it was amazing how much they changed over that period across the whole time of the job market. And they were, so I tailored them for each job, but but I had something sort of to start with. I thought through like, well, what am I including in the teaching statement? What is the evidence I'm putting there? How am I setting up the research statement for the future? So I think the earlier you can sort of have a draft of those, you have a sense of what that's going to look like and work through this editing process. But I mean, if you look at my initial version that I wrote 2 years ago, it's hugely different from the final version that I had in packets. So just be careful about version control and don't apply to the University of Wrong.
I don't really have anything to add, because I think, unfortunately, given how competitive the job market is taking the time to tailor just can set you heads and shoulders above others who haven't done that, right? But like you're saying, having some basic templates from which to work and then use just slightly, maybe some of them very slightly alter or tremendously alter depending on the institution. That saves you time.
And obviously, if you do get an interview, that makes doing your research even more of a priority, because it's expected at that point. And quite honestly, we've interviewed some candidates who've shocked me because they knew, in microscopic detail about our curriculum and referencing courses we'd offered. It's like, have you been here 10 years? Details.
Yeah, because usually you can look up and they'll have a course catalog and you can see sort of potentially the classes you might teach in that position. And so when I got to the campus interview, I had sort of templates of how I might teach these classes. Ready with what books I would use, ready with kind of a conceptual kind of organization of the class.
Well, I want to open it back up to the floor for one or two more questions if you have.
I have been on the job market before, I'm a postdoc now, but one thing that I encountered a lot when I was applying to jobs, and you've talked about tailoring your cover letter, a lot of times they will not give you the name of the search committee members.
Right.
And sometimes they do, they say address your letter to whoever, but when they don't, how is an appropriate way to show that you did put the time in to research who you're speaking to, but there is no name?
So that's been my experience. So when someone said don't do to whom it is concerned, I was like, oh, well.
Leave the name up.
So to whom is not, but I would say, so the way I've done it when I don't know, and most of the time I didn't know anybody in the search committee until I made the next round, right, or the final round. I just said, dear esteemed members of the search committee. You know, I like to sort of do an honorable sort of, but recognize it specifically to this search committee. Sometimes you can know the chair and nothing else, and so then you can write directly to the chair.
And address it to the position.
Thank you.
Question about the tailoring as well. So, like, when you want to really know the information from the institution, sometimes when you say the goals or the strategic plan, those things, they all sound like big words. How can you really connect that one to your own research and get a really smooth way to show that you can be a good member to this institution or this department?
So one suggestion I have is to look at existing research within the department or work within the university or teaching within the university, and that gives you a more like detailed, concrete sense of maybe what the big thematic descriptions are for the position of the department.
Yeah, I'd say, I mean, so I'm mostly in a religion-related fields, but like, so what I did was I did look at the faculty and I looked at what they wrote, and then I did find out, once I knew who was on the search committee, I went and read something from each search committee thing, and when I did my phone interview, I had prepared notes, so I could exactly reference somebody's book and some idea that they had on that book, insofar as it naturally flowed into the conversation. I didn't make it happen, right? But I was ready, if it naturally flowed there, to have that piece there. So I just, and then usually, again, they have a course catalog, seeing the kind of courses they teach, seeing what's been recently taught, it gives you a sense of what matters, what's important to their research, what's important to their teaching vision. And then looking at the programming, usually a school website will have, what kind of special lectures are they having, and what kind of colloquiums are they having, and that speaks to sort of their current interest in one way or another, so that you can dig deeper than the sort of big word mission statements or whatever, like what does that mean, right? And if you have a friend, call them up. Like if you have somebody connected to that institution, either as a former student or, definitely call them up and talk.
So you've all talked about showing, not telling on the applications and pointing to concrete experiences that we've had, things that we've done as being essential. But in terms of the themes of application materials, how much should we talk about things with an eye towards this is what I will bring to your department, and say that explicitly? Like, I'm interested in working for your college because I look forward to doing these things, and not in the sense of I'm excited to have these opportunities, but rather you should hire me because I can do these things for you. How much should we look to explain our past experiences as indicators of future performance versus how much should we expect people just to sort of read that into it?
I'd say be pretty explicit.
Yeah.
Again, we really have a twofold formula. Do you like to teach? That's what we do. And then the second part is, can you navigate a very complex and diverse student body? Are you adaptable? Would you enjoy that? And, if you have past experiences that can demonstrate that, yeah, I would absolutely accentuate that. And quite honestly, I think for most jobs at most institutions, being able to demonstrate those qualities are going to help you. So when we come over for your PFF visit, maybe we'll get you into a part-time position.
Yeah, if you need anybody.
Help you build some of those stories.
Teach Greek, yeah.
So I agree, being concrete and direct and explicit, but tone does matter, so like,
Yeah.
like you could do that and sound like you're an I, right?
Right.
Or you could do it as like, I see that you're doing this, and that exactly resonates with things, these things that I'm doing, or these things I'm thinking, or this research, or this part of my teaching philosophy. You see, so that if you make it about them, in which you're showing how you fit well, I mean, we're all the same, like, they much rather, I think most people want to say, yeah, this person knows who we are, and they fit, like, rather than somebody who sounds like an ego, like I, and
Yeah.
to my horn, right? So there's that sort of very important, like, you do want to be explicit, and you do want to show a very concrete connection, but you want to weave it into their vision.
Maybe. I'm kind of thinking a question that it's kind of a puzzle to us, like applicants. It's like the timeline for the search committee. Like, it's usually open like September or October. Then what this timeline looks like throughout the whole year. Because that's kind of a black box to us.
Well, the typical job search season starts now, right? October,
Right.
and then,
So if they have a like starting date for reviewing. So like if you pass that date,
You
but
can
you
still
jump
apply.
in, right?
So,
you do that,
so
then
the
when
deadline,
would
so we
be-
have 3 searches right now with a November 1 deadline. So that's when we're starting to review applicants. But it specifically says that's when the application review begins. It doesn't mean that it's closed to further applications. Now, it does sort of raise a question if somebody hasn't applied by then, but then it could potentially be, like if it's an upper level search, well, we need to woo this bigger level person. And so even if they haven't applied, we're going to still try to get them to apply. So there's reasons why you leave a search open. But a lot of times you leave a search open because you want to leave it open to, if people we were hoping applied didn't apply, then I want to be able to pick up the phone and say, please, we invite you to apply. And it leaves it open for time for that. But it's more open for that than open for just the unknown person. Like the unknown person probably should have applied by the deadline, but it's still open for them to apply afterwards too. But then, so that's when you start reviewing applications, and then, I don't know, other people have different timelines, but typically then you narrow it down, and then you might have phone interviews or Skype interviews or conference interviews, and then.
So that will be by like December or next year?
So, yeah.
I think it does depend
Each
on
search
the
is different, to
department,
tell you
yeah.
the truth. Each search
And so-
has a life of its own. So, you might take a month, so a typical, but again, each search has, you might take a month to review applications, then take the next month to narrow it down, like through these phone interviews, so that month we'll have narrowed it down to 10 or so. And then take the next month to narrow that down, so that the next month we've got the 3 that we're gonna think about inviting to campus. So it might be a 3-month process, but again, every search has a life of its own.
Some committees fail.
Right.
And it's maybe putting it harshly, but they can't come to the conclusion, or that they find that their final pool of candidates are not going to meet their needs, and they start over. I've been on committees that started over twice, and we ended up getting a very, very good person positioned, but it took much longer than we anticipated. So even though, particularly for the 4 years, I think the season starts now. You can find jobs that come available later in the year, and in the college level, but it's much more flexible because we have to deal with different sorts of funding issues. So sometimes we'll hire for spring, sometimes we'll hire for fall, depending on the circumstances.
And then it can vary as to when you contact a person to say, hey, you have not moved forward in the process, right? So
If they contact.
Right, you think that's a problem, but, you know, ideally the
Sometimes
search
you just don't
committee,
hear.
yeah, ideally search committee should contact, you
Yeah.
know, like, if they've narrowed it down to 10, and you're sure about, like, these others are not at all an option, then, you know, they really should have contacted you, but unfortunately it doesn't always happen, to let you know, hey, you haven't moved forward.
And it doesn't hurt to call the HR department at that institution just to see where you are.
But then there's other reasons why they may hold and not want to tell you, because they're like, okay, this person we're not sure, they don't make the first cut, but if things fall apart here, we might want to go back to this person. So there may be reasons why they deliberately have not called other candidates to say, hey, you're no longer in the process.
On that note, I think I'm going to draw things to a close for today. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing their expertise with us.